Hello and welcome to another episode of Coffeefusion. This week we're going to look at launching a new coffee. Hey guys, so last week I launched the Sumatran Mengaya, one of my first new single origins since I started the roastery. But I thought I'd use this video to talk to you about the process that I go through when I'm selecting a new coffee and what happens all the way up to release. So if you've been with Coffeefusion for a while, you'll know that a couple of months ago I did a cupping on Snapchat. And what I was doing there was cupping a few different single origin options from one of the importers I use, MTC Group. But first of all, before I get to that point, what I do is I kind of send an email out, ask them what they've got currently on hand and what they've got perhaps which is sounding interesting. And so I look through all of those options and I see which is perhaps interesting to myself and might be good for the Coffeefusion community. And also I look at seasonality, like whether it's fresh crop or not. And so then from that point, I nail it down to a few different samples and they will send me roasted samples for me to cup. So if you remember that Snapchat cupping, what we did was we did a cupping together and I went through and I cupped all of the coffees and I told you the characteristics and what was interesting about the coffees. And you guys got back to me through Snapchat and then we decided on the Sumatran Mengaya. So fast forward a little while and then it was time for me to get my next delivery. And so I got the Sumatran in. But that's not the end of the story because now I kind of have to figure out where it's going to be at its best, where it kind of fits in with my other coffees. And so this is when the fun begins in terms of roasting. So if you've roasted any similar coffees before, you might have a bit of a starting point as to where you might roast the coffee. But at the end of the day, you've just got to chuck some coffee in the drum and kind of have a look at it and see how it roasts and see how it evolves. Once this first roast is done, that's when you start cupping it again, see how it compares to your original roasted sample, as well as then starting to brew it with a few different brew devices and see what brings out the best in it and see if there's anything that you perhaps want to change with the profile before you can release it. For me in this case, my first roast, I found that I got through the roast a little bit quick, it ran a little bit too fast, and it was a little bit underdeveloped through espresso. It was very good as a filter coffee, but I was wanting to get some more kind of bold flavors out of this one and use it for espresso, so I knew that I had to alter my roast profile. So from here, I made those changes to the roast profile, did a secondary roast, and then cupped that and started brewing it and started tasting exactly how I wanted it to taste through espresso. In the meantime, there's lots of background research that I do to kind of get an understanding of the coffee and how it compares to other coffees or what makes it different to similar coffees in the region. For example, in Indonesia, a lot of the time it's either a smallholder farm or even perhaps just a couple of trees that the family owns, and they'll just pick the cherries and leave them on the side of the road, and then a truck will come along and pick up all the cherries. And so what ends up happening because of that, you'll get a lot of kind of very, very small crop and it's all mixed together and you end up with like Indonesian coffee, which is all blended by one big exporter. And so the coffee will go through a lot of different hands before it gets to that point. And so the traceability and the quality control is quite low. But with this coffee, it's a few small farms within a region and the picking and the processing is a lot more carefully done. It's a lot more selective and it's all brought to one mill and then you get some really, really good quality flavors because that picking and that processing is done really well. So that's what makes this coffee a little bit different from other Indonesian coffees, and you might have read me saying that this tastes like so much better than other coffees that I've tasted from Indonesia before, and it's really exciting to see that this could be potentially the future of Indonesian coffee. So at this point, we're almost ready to release the coffee, so there's just a few more things to do. For example, getting that story up on the website so everyone can read about it, getting a lot more cupping done and getting those flavor descriptors really narrowed in so I can write some tasty notes and all that kind of thing, and then we're ready to launch. Along with this stage of the process, it's nailing those recipes and that kind of thing, so if anyone's asking how I would brew the coffee, I can give a little recipe as a guide, but always I would like you guys to kind of experiment on your own and see what you can bring out of the coffee. So there we go guys, that brings us to launch and that coffee is ready for you to grab now. So if you haven't had the Sumatran yet, grab a bag, it's tasting so good. And thank you to all of the people that have grabbed coffee already. You guys are reporting back saying that you're really enjoying it now. The first cafes in Perth are starting to grab it as well. It's already at Nexus in Mount Lawley and some other cafes are going to be following along. Thanks a lot, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something from it. It's a little bit of an educational one about the business side of a roastery. If you enjoyed it, just click that like button because that really helps me. And if this is your first video, Coffeefusion is a little community, and what we do is we talk a lot about coffee. We have lots of different coffee related videos going on, and we also have a roastery so you can buy the coffees and try the kind of techniques that you learn on Coffeefusion. So if this is your first video and you like what you see, click subscribe because there's more of this coming every week. Thanks so much, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hello and welcome to another episode of Coffeefusion. This week we're going to look at... okay, here we go.